Well, thank you so much, Maria Eugenia, for this introduction. 2 seconds just to say how pleased I am to be here 12 years after the first time, to get to see again the organization, the monitoring organizations, and so many representatives of other organizations, also colleagues and friends. I think from the side of the NGOs, this is one of the most weighted panels. Let's see if in these 3 institutional donors that we have here in the panel today, we can get to know the different approaches of each of them. We're going to be starting with Celestino from Ineco. Ineco is a company, and it's also a public company. How does Ineco select NGOs, and how... I'm going to ask the double question so that you can take your time. And how do you... what information coming from the monitoring organizations use? To us, this is a key step. The other day, I was working with a team working with us. In 2022, we cooperated with 73 NGOs and with 7 social allies. These are universities that we found. We have 28 study grants. And when we talked about the way we would present this, I saw Adela the other day, and I don't want to skip talking about this cooperation with her. Very soon we will be traveling to Santiago de Compostela with them, and I know that all the employees in Ineco are working hand in hand, and we're going to be doing this challenge of Madrid-Santiago in 24 hours again. I thought that the best way of showing the way we cooperate is by presenting an example. We have a project that is called Ingeniosos, the ingenious ones. We have also been working with the Fundación Lealtad. We're launching the 5th edition of this program that has enabled us to work in the international cooperation. We have worked already in 10 countries. This project is about, as Nacho said priorly, is about our professionals who are pushing this project forward. I will start by the end. The project is about this. We select 3 projects every year. They need to be connected to our activity. That is to provide basic services, for instance, bringing water to a village in Africa. This can be a real life changer. Children can even go to school just due to the fact that they have water in their village. So our engineers, our architects design the project from scratch in cooperation with the NGO. Ineco funds the 100% of the investment, and this infrastructure has 1 year to be carried out and to be commissioned, to be in place. To us, this is a key project. This is our 5th edition. The first edition we organized, we had very clear in our minds what were the terms that we were thinking of, but we also knew that we required a great number of hours from volunteering work. How can we ensure that such an investment is fully fulfilled in such a short term? And for this, Fundación Lealtad and the monitoring organizations have been key. What do? You do everything until we start working on it. We design the terms and conditions. You disseminate these terms and conditions among the NGOs. Obviously, these are very trustworthy NGOs. we can be sure that we will be working with people that will make our investment really worth it. And when we have the names of these different NGOs, we make our own internal selection, we give priority to the choice of our employees, and then we start working with them. So for us, your work is absolutely key. I will give an example. There was a very interesting project some time back. It could have been establishing some solar panels in a village, or how to fight female ablation in Kenya, etc. So we received a project that did not comply with all the requirements to be part of this program. So we told them that we couldn't work with NGOs. So this NGO actually worked in order to fulfill these requirements, and since then we are working with them. I will try to stick to my time. There are three main pillars, the first of which is innovation. We do not want to stay at the same, working on the same topics. We have our core projects, such as this that we carry out with the Adela organization and several others, but we're looking for innovation. So in 2023, it's the first time that we're going to be implementing a new innovation model, a sort of space where people can, any of the 5,000 employees in Ineco will have the opportunity of providing projects. There will be a committee in charge of the selection of some projects, and with this we will be having we will be handling more projects. The second pillar is the human capital. It was my turn today, or it was up to me to come today, but I'm just a representative of the company. I have to say that the real force, the real strength of these corporate social responsibility are the employees in Ineco. We make a donation and they actually multiply by 2 the amount that we put to these donation, and so they are actually key for the projects. And the third pillar is the monitoring organizations. How can we ensure that all this time, all this funding will be useful, the purpose will be achieved? Excellence is one of our main strategic axes, and efficiency, excellency are non-negotiable. This needs to be complied with. We need to ensure that everything we set up with the 73 NGOs that we work with and with the universities that we work with, we have a certain guarantee. Obviously, this cannot be guaranteed 100%, but thanks to the work of the monitoring organizations, we can be sure that the purposes will be achieved. Well, thank you very much. I see that the donors are also promoters for the NGOs to comply with the requirements. This is a very important aspect. And also, it's interesting that you highlight the participation of the employees throughout the process. We have here also Inés. She is the managing director of the Fundación Juan Entrecanales de Azcarate, a family foundation that has a long history. And can you hear me? Well, between Ineco and La Caixa, I feel like if we were mayors, they would be representing Madrid and Paris, and I'm from a small village in the middle of nowhere. Well, we have much less resources, both economic and human resources. We are not a corporation. We do not belong to any big bank, but our entity has nothing to do with Acciona, by the way. They have their own social activity. I represent a foundation that might have corporate name, but we are completely different. We started working 17 years, and one of the first calls that we made was to Patricia de Roda, and she gave us an enormous help. They showed us how to analyze, how to ask, how to progress, what proposals, what value proposal we had as a foundation, and how we could help within this third sector. So we are 17 years old. The first 2 years were learning by mistakes instead of learning by doing. So do you give an importance to the monitoring organizations? Yes, we do. Salvador, you were saying that maybe we're not ready to have this black list. You called it, well, this is what you said, but we do it. And of course, with much fewer resources than you might have. I would like to have not only one foundation as Fundación Lealtad, but 2. I would like to have some ratings as well when the donor organizations ask us for help. The first thing that we do is we follow the model that Fundación Lealtad showed us based on good practices, on transparency. So we start with a form and we filter the social entity. We support the projects, but the main analysis that we do is with regards to the organization. So the organization needs to respond to several questions. I will not get into detail in these questions, but we ask them if they are audited, if you have a quality certificate, do you have any internal code, what types of funding you have, internal, external, public, private, etc. So we have sort of a snapshot of the organization, and against what usually happens with the forms, we have been learning that it was very important that what we ask is very important towards changing the sector. If we ask somebody, what's your theory of the change, or what's your value proposal? In the face of that question, that for us is very important in the first filter, we see that many entities from the third sector, especially in Spain, they are not very they do not elaborate a lot in their answers, or they do not know what their theory of change is. They do not know the actors, or when they have to talk about the value proposal, it's hard for us to understand what the differences are. And when it comes to the third question, do you work with those actors? We see that very often they belong to networks, to platforms, but it's difficult that we see many NGOs that work together and they cooperate, and we see that they deal with the same beneficiaries, and the truth is that they belong to a platform, but they do not work collectively. And from our foundation, what we're trying to boost, to push through these forms is try to think of a change, try to change the way you look at things, try to start working in a cooperative manner in a society that is becoming more and more cooperative. And we use these questions to enable many projects requested by different social entities, and to which many donors can add our resources and push the limits of the poverty.
We carry out 3 analyses. Social entity, where we carry out those 2 questions that are, very important to us. We also work with other non-certified organizations until they reach 7 years. When you turn your 7th year, we push accreditation, but just asking, are you a Lealtad certified organization? Yes or no? If they don't know it, they will become acquainted with the work that we do. And the best prescriber of such certificate is one of those foundations. And we believe And this is something we learned 17 years ago. It's not only about auditing, it is an opportunity for the entity to improve practices. So our growing interest in support to the third sector, for it to become more professional. You know, companies are not here to tell us how to do things, and the third sector has tremendous talent, but also many areas of improvement. One of them is to be, thankful, or, allow others to certify them, to audit them, to monitor them, and also to work collectively, but forging true sheer alliances, because, the brand recognition makes it very difficult to for this coexistence and generation, and or temporary unions or JVs that make it possible. It's because one started, draining on one hand and the other one on the other. Secondly, the project, we analyze it. I loved it because I found someone from Manos Unidas, Alejandro, and he said, "You are the toughest of them all. We are a very small entity, yet we have rigor. We are very elastic because we can encompass many projects from, social entrepreneurs that perhaps are not registered as an NGO, or a foundation like MSF, and we support their emergencies, or we support them because their theory of change and value proposition is outstanding." So we have a very broad, ecosystem of opportunities. And there's one part where we want to instill a theory of change for it to be an entity that can prove their sustainability in time. So if we drain for a dual to be built, this needs to be taken care by the local citizens. We also accompany these organizations after the DD, because it takes us a lot of effort. We accompany them for 3 or 4 years, and after 7 years you need to have a management quality certificate. We are worried if we are the only financial institutions backing them, but for startups, I've seen Pablo Horsaman, when he knocked on our doors 8 or 9 years ago. This was a social startup. It was an adventure, and I'm tremendously pleased that they have received the UNICEF award. Very important social organizations, and if you do an excellent due diligence, we apply the Ashoka Foundation. I am the vice president of the Ashoka Foundation. That helped me understand where entrepreneurs are, and I set up interviews, I visit the project, and and they remember me, otherwise Alejandro won't remember me, and we learn tremendously. But Salvador, continue working on the monitoring, and I believe you need to introduce some things related to impact so you can help us and to broaden your network. Some of the speakers explained that social entrepreneurship is growing to venture philanthropy. Those, injecting money to these causes, we need to ask ourselves the adequate questions, and your view is essential. Yes, the organizations monitors to be seen as donors. The selection process instilling good practices among entities, which is very interesting, and the things that you have mentioned. Let's move on to Joana Prats from the Bancaria Foundation of La Caixa. This is the biggest foundation in Spain, one of the largest organizations in the world, with a budget of 538 million euros, and 60% of them are social projects. Joana, how do you manage that? How do you select entities? Excellent. Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you very much for this kind invitation, and it is a pleasure to listen to these talks. This is very interesting. As Patricia said, this is 60% of it. So this is all about, social responsibility and social commitment. And everything we do is fully rooted in our mission to contribute to build a better society, giving opportunities to those that need it the most. And this is what generates the lines of action. On the social field, these are just separate talks. We distinguish between our own programs, which actions we boost from our foundation, 4 of them. Fight against children's poverty, labour insertion of the less favoured individuals, elderly attention, and the elderly programme. And a few years ago, as a strategic decision of the entity, we decided we're not going to create a network, a parallel network to intervene, whereas everyone will support itself or to work with the organizations, local organizations. It's about joining efforts, and this is one of the biggest challenges. And you know, how we choose entities is very much determined. What are the criteria behind choosing this? So we are talking about the children's program, one of the broadest in terms of budget. 60,000 children with a budget of almost 70 million euros. It is a program in all the communities in Spain, in regions, and we are setting it in motion. So with a specific call where we want to deploy the program. Programs previously defined, the methodology is set up with the scientific guidelines of all the different programs. And once we have defined this, and once we know how we want to act, well, this is what we put in motion, and we understand which entities have the intention to jump on this bandwagon and work together. So, and I explain this quite quickly because then we will deal with the second block. What is the most important aspect behind choosing those entities that, based on the methodological proposal that we want to bring about, that present, you know, creditworthiness, solvency? They have proven track record in this matter. They have extensive knowledge, implementation in the territory, possibility to bring or forge alliances. And based on that proposal, how do they consider they can, you know, deploy and implement the program in this territory? Then the assessment takes place, or the action monitoring takes place. But I would like to, you know, talk about trust here and ongoing assessment. So what we believe is essential are the entities which are part of the program. The Pro Infancia program, we cooperate with more than 400 entities. And this is recurring project. These are not one-offs for 1 year. We need to carefully choose the charities, and we need to forge, you know, this trust with our professionals that are, you know, locally working, and we need to ensure an ongoing, you know, assessment, monitoring, in order to have evidence of their impact, in order to ensure the overall sustainability of the project and to provide potential extensions. So forging trust and constant, you know, monitoring. Those entities joining the program know this is an ongoing, lifelong program. They know annually there is an audit, there is a monitoring, there is a corporate social responsibility issue, and I couldn't agree more with you. We need to be responsible and to ensure that what we are doing has its impact, it's done correctly, and the excellence behind management. So everything that is not our own program, it's part of another sphere, and I'm talking about the calls for social projects, whereby we reinforce our actions on the territory, namely our mission, which is to respond to the needs of the less favorable individuals and the improvement of quality of life and opportunities. This is the second block. This is where we say we are willing to cooperate with entities that bring about these projects that are a response to this objective, global objective, and that therefore the focus is not only the entity and its management capacity, but the project that they are presenting. These are annual calls to which we spent almost 40 million euros last year. In 2022 we received 5,000 projects and we could only select with this budget 1,500, well 1,400. And there's an important element. You need to define well what you prioritize. The call for tenders and the actual terms and conditions of a call are very important. If you prioritize, it's when the entities can understand, you know, am I eligible or not, and they select the projects they put forward. We have an external assessment team to assess all these projects based on the criteria that we set up together jointly, bearing in mind the entity and the project. Well, with the passing of time, we have fine-tuned to these new realities. But at the end of the day, we have reached 12% of the entity, 88% of the project. We have adjusted this, but it is true that all the entities that can be presenting their projects have to be legally constituted with the minimum legal aspects, the adequate registry, being up to date with the current payments they're eligible for, and the taxes, of course. But we also take into consideration that they are a non-for-profit organization, transparency, disclosure, the network of volunteers, the feasibility of the entity, and then we focus on the project. And this is where it's very important to ensure how monitors work. Well, with a form that Ines mentioned, there is a specific form, and even though we want to ensure it could be as self-explanatory as possible, it requires a cumbersome effort, because we have the responsibility to choose between these 5,000 and to carefully choose. So it is very important for the entities to really explain what they want to tackle, how they want to tackle, and the impact they want to have, not only for these people, but on the territory they are acting at, and how they do. And these are the two blocks that take 60% of the actual rating of the project. What would you want to tackle, how you intend to do it, or how you want to measure this follow-up. The feasibility of the project, the sustainability are key aspects that we bear in mind. Because when choosing, you need to be capable to rate those projects with biggest potential. This is the first technical stage. We've just added something this year that is of tremendous help. And these are the best rated projects that go through a territorial assessment. These calls are divided into different autonomous regions in Spain. And apart from what the entities present, which is the starting point, we need to have this close look at the territory, who they cooperate with, how they are set up, how they overcome this challenge. So, and what is this role in the territory? I also wanted to ask you, and this is one of the questions which is often asked by entities when these aid is not granted. in La Caixa Foundation, do you give feedback to the organizations? Yes, yes. I've always been worried about this tremendously. I have always repeatedly said to my teams that we need to be objective, transparent, and we need to prove it, explain it, and we need to give feedback, because there is something that you mentioned, Ines, but you can set up the, the guidelines or the minimum requirements in your own program. This is less, but when an entity asks you why am I not eligible, you need to be able to tell them the strengths and the weaknesses of the project, and this helps in the overall improvement of the third sector. So if we are asked, we give feedback. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, so you use this certificate, would you ask for more? Yeah. Let me be very concise, but there are three fundamental elements. The first one is selection, and this is the actual assessment, the auditing, and with whole peace of mind, knowing that we are working with, foundations, NGOs and charities that have the full trust. Then the relationship with the NGO. We sometimes are in discussions with these NGO, and they put our feet firmly on the ground, saying, hey, this is our business, you do your own business, but the certificate is where we can learn an awful lot, because every single year through an external agent we are certified that the money that we have donated to all the different NGOs with their actual registry is well invested, that they have obtained the desired profits, and that has overall benefited everyone or in every one of their targets. And we can also report to the steering committee saying that we have engaged in a social investment. So I would like to just boost that part, thanks to the support that you can give us with the certificates at the end of the process, and ratings, certificates, and these. In 1 minute, please, Ines. I wanted to ask you, within similar environments like institutional donors, do you also exchange information about NGOs as a trust generation engine? Here we have the Caixa Foundation as the example of the largest donor, as well as other kinds of donors like ourselves. We have created a work group. We want to see what can we do better as donors, how can we facilitate NGOs' life, and one of the final remarks is, let's ask similar questions, really, so these interviewees have more or less clear guidelines. So I think that certifying entities can help us. Perhaps our foundations could be different, but there could be a very similar level of questions that should be similar, and that they should be asked in the similar way. And as such, and this is one of my longest fights, is to try and focus on aid to development, but also social causes, and to provoke a union among the different donors. So La Caixa Foundation certifies social entities. When I see that any given social entity is going to ask for help, and then it requires your certificate, these gens know their business. So that's the reason why we've got to be extremely careful in who we certificate, who we give money to, because we can either donate and make a meaningless social investment, or quite the opposite, we can invest in some entities that are worthy. That's why it's important for donors to speak to each other. What is the analysis of the sector, the industry, your view on these ongoing trends, and also to be able to take part in forums where we exchange and distribute information. And I think this is going to overall improve the industry as long as we are improving as donors, and this is one of the biggest key takeaways. We are right on time. Perfect. Maria Eugenia is just with a timer on her hand right now, so you nailed it. Thank you. So thank you very much indeed. So let me cluster the different questions. They've asked about the assessment criteria, the monitoring criteria. You've answered most of them, but one criteria which is often asked from NGOs is innovation. There are certain projects where entities say innovation is not that possible. The attention of certain, or care of certain individuals, the actual delivery of foods that do not have any potential for innovation. Is it possible? How do they fit within your scheme, projects, programs? It is an open question. If you want to, Ines, do you want to answer this one? No, you have more money. You take this one. Come on. This is an interesting question, yet a very difficult one. But this has been often discussed in many occasions. And at a certain point in time, we said, okay, there's a harsh reality. We need to adapt to it. The reality we are facing. These calls which are meaningful to boost new projects. That's amazing. This on paper is marvelous, yet we have a harsh reality in our country, and we said we have to change this. We are willing to cooperate with pilot projects, but we also want to engage in lifelong projects. And you are asking about innovation. If you prioritize innovation, there are certain aspects which are beyond social innovation. So if we do not have a specific social innovation criteria, that's one thing, but we do have a words pricing innovation. But this is not part of the criteria. Pure innovation for the sake of innovating, no. I have two hats. On the one hand, I invest in social impact funds where these innovation areas are well reflected. But I do believe that social enterprises that survived the pandemic had to innovate tremendously. Innovating is not about reinventing the wheel. We deliver an awful lot of food and meals, but doing it differently. For instance, if the idea is about the continuation of the social canteens, or are we going to start investing in a platform, a real estate, a real estate entity or fund to that? And this is innovation. There are certain services that can be given from an innovative perspective, and you're feeding them, because if you feed them, you don't make them stand on a queue, and you're just sending men a visum, and they could go to another institution and rebuild their life. In the field of care, we can have a lot of innovative projects when we incorporate a new view, and people come up with outstanding ideas, really mind-blowing and groundbreaking within the systemic change. Take a look at the social entrepreneurs of Ashoka. They come up with outstanding ideas, really innovative ideas. So with MSF, they do business as usual, but we have an amalgamation of all the different options. There is a lot of innovation that resides on the micromanagement, the capacity to change things, and this is innovation. So I do have a very last question. The workload behind the submission of the accounts and auditing the processes and the P&L of companies or different entities. Is there too much workload, like the burden of this red tape that is required? Yeah, well, this is linked with the digital transformation we advocate for, because believing is about creating, and in order to do that, we need to, innovate, which is not always about, reaching triumph. It's when we talked about innovation, yes, the actual workload and all the admin paperwork in engineering projects, this really requires collaboration among us all. There is a lot of red tape, really. You need to supervise. Take a look at the certificates from your engineering team. You need to sign it and bring it to payments. And one of the innovative projects was, digitalize. This is time saving, and excluding productive activity, we also have to boost volunteering. If we could have more hours of volunteer work, because we have been able to transform the company digitally, that would be much better. It is very important to let people think, and if you want to let them think, you need to give them time, space. The only way to innovate is to let people think and propose new proposals. And if we want to continue evolving, we need to innovate.
Fenomenal.